Coming at you from the Beaver County Auto studios up above Market Square here in downtown Pittsburgh. This is a spookier version, a Halloween edition here of Mic Drop on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I am your host, Mike Asti, and my costume for this Halloween edition here of our golden broadcast of Mic Drop on Pittsburgh Sports Live, well, as you can see, it's pretty scary, one of the scarier costumes out there. I'm going as a sports media personality. Wow. I know. Hide the kids. Pretty terrifying. I don't know if they're all ready, but I'm going here as a sports media personality and a Pittsburgh sports media personality. That's even an advanced version. It's really spooky here for this Halloween version of Mic Drop on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Want to make sure to check out our websites. Check out Pittsburgh Sports Now. Check out Pittsburgh Hockey Now, Pittsburgh Soccer Now as well. And of course, pghsportslive.com, where you can find this version of Radio Gold and anything we do content-wise for Pittsburgh Sports Live archived for all eternity on pghsportslive.com. You can, this is pretty important as well, you can follow us on Twitter at pghsportslive. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Pittsburgh Sports Live, and when you click on the subscribe button, you get notifications of this and everything we do at Pittsburgh Sports Live. Easier for us to bring it to you. Now, I know I'm scaring you here with my costume as a Pittsburgh sports media personality, and I know this is a Halloween edition here of Mic Drop on Pittsburgh Sports Live. So let's start out with what's scary, or at least what would be scary to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's Le'Veon Bell reporting in Week 11. Yeah, they won't say it. Mike Tomlin jokes around in his press conference saying anyone got any questions besides Le'Veon Bell when that was subtly kind of mentioned towards the end. We all laughed, and he didn't really walk out of the press conference. It was over anyway, but they have fun with it. And the players, besides the little jabs weeks ago, they kind of now got over that, and they love Connor, but they're not going to bash Le'Veon Bell publicly anymore. And they want anyone that can help them on the team. And the Steelers, of course, PR-wise, communications department, they're never going to publicly say they don't want Le'Veon Bell. And everybody has expected that if he hadn't been there already, and if he didn't report in Week 7 off the ESPN report, and if he continuously missing these game checks, that Week 11, he'd be there. Because everybody's known that Week 11, if he's not there by then, not only is he missing more game checks, but then he loses free agent year. He doesn't get to accrue a season, then he's not a free agent. It ends up being a whole thing with the Steelers because then they can slap the franchise tag on him again next year, and that's doomsday for Le'Veon Bell. He's hated the tag this year. That's why he's not been there. He's hated the tag the year before and kind of warned that he would sit out to this point if he was tagged again. So that's been the scary, spooky thing around the Pittsburgh Steelers, that they have James Conner. He's playing well. They don't necessarily need or want Le'Veon Bell to kind of rock the boat. I mean, they're leading the AFC North right now, have a divisional game coming up. If they win that, they're going to be comfortably in the driver's seat of the AFC North, if not even the conference, besides a couple teams. They're right up there again. They're not playing great. They have struggled. The defense is better now. They're still having success, and finally the offense is clicking a little bit, but it's not been peaches and cream. But regardless, Connor's playing well enough, they can kind of sell a being done with Le'Veon Bell. And I don't know how much the running game needs to now step up. Bell's no longer a need. But there's a way now where they can kind of get their way, and it doesn't screw over Le'Veon Bell. Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, got to give him credit where it's due, dropped a little nugget, a little plan that maybe works for both sides. Because I didn't even want to talk about this for this broadcast. That's why I didn't do it the last couple weeks. That's why I talked some Penguins last week, and I'll get to them in a moment here. Got a little rant to close this broadcast. But I was just sick of the topic, as I think many of us are. And you can keep churning it every week, and you'll get some clicks, and it'll add you some views, and it'll be good for the fans because they're looking for it, even though they say maybe they're annoyed as well. It's out there. The national media is going to cover it. Ian Rappaport's going to give you the minute-by-minute news of Le'Veon Bell, even when mostly it's no news. So I was just sick of it. I'll be honest with you. I didn't really want this to be the topic of the broadcast, certainly not the headline topic. But then I read Pro Football Talk. Then I read Mike Floria's little idea. And he gave you the options and what the real options are. A three-prong effect there, him coming in week 11, him not being tagged again, that whole scenario. You can read him and find him on your own if you want to go through it. But the one little part there that maybe works out for both sides, and I've heard some colleagues bring this up, that's why I decided it's more Bell talk. I gotta get this out there because I think I agree with him. I think this is the best medicine for both sides. This is really the only way for Le'Veon Bell to get kind of a win and get the fruit of his labor of really not laboring and not being there and missing these game checks, aside from just having more fresh legs and without having the car crash and all the legs on his body and being taxed by a season of work for a team that doesn't want to pay him down the line, doesn't want to give him the guaranteed money that a Todd Gurley and David Johnson have had as a running back. Steelers aren't going to give him that kind of guaranteed money, especially now with what James Conner is doing, which I don't think Le'Veon Bell, the Steelers, or anybody else really predicted, despite many hoping this would happen. I don't think many predicted that Conner would have 1,200 plus rushing yards, which is what he's on pace for. Already 9 touchdowns. I mean, have a decent game here, though. Here or there, he can get 20 TDs through the year. We're about halfway through. He has 9. It's already more than I thought. It's already one more than a bet I made with a former NFLer and co-host of mine for some 93.7 shows, and Doran Dickerson. I had a bet that he would have eight touchdowns or less. Ends up with 9. So I never thought this either. We still got to figure out how I'm going to pay that bet. But I'm going to have him on this show sometime in the future, and we'll figure it out. Got 9 TDs. So Conner's played better than you would have thought. And I think the way that you get around this, though, for winning on both sides, because nobody expected this, but now the Steelers really don't, in their heart of hearts, want Le'Veon Bell there. They don't feel he's a need, and they're not going to pay him long term. He doesn't probably really even want to go there. He just wants to accrue that free agency season so he doesn't get tagged again and then can go sign and get his straight cash homie, get the bag that he's been wanting, and he's now preserved himself for to make himself healthier and figure that he still has a resume that would garner that money. Whether that is the case or not will remain to be seen, but this option is a win for both. Mike Florio suggested it in Pro Football Talk, and Le'Veon Bell rumors, here's why the running back could skip entire season, why the Steelers might prefer it. Get that out of there. That's Mike Florio. That's Pro Football Talk. This is off his suggestion. That was for the headline for the CBS article, but this is off Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk suggestion. This is kind of what they were covering. You see the success there from James Conner, already 127 carries, 599 yards, 9 touchdowns. He's already doing it big, well over or around career numbers already, only 100 or so yards away from what he had career-wise, and on pace for 1,200 plus yards, maybe almost 20 touchdowns. It was incredible stuff. Nobody would have thought. The plan, Mike Florio's plan, since here's why the running back would skip entire season, why the Steelers might prefer it. Mike Florio suggesting that, hey, maybe there's a wink-wink between the Steelers and Le'Veon Bell. It's illegal, but how are you going to prove this? Kind of where he was going. Maybe there's a wink-wink in terms of maybe the Steelers allow Le'Veon Bell not to show up at all this year because of the success of James Conner, because they really don't want him there, because he could really probably do nothing but rock the boat, add drama where they don't want it to be, and now running back is no longer a need, really, as they've been able to win and move the offense and move the ball on the ground without him. And Connor's even had success as a receiver, so he's filled that bill. Maybe there's a wink-wink. He doesn't show up at all, keeps preserving the body, because he doesn't want to get in those car crashes and risk taxing his body for that future team. And maybe the Steelers just don't tag him next year. It always was thought that if he didn't show up in Week 11, he would definitely be there by then because he would be tagged again next year. He'd lose the free agency season. We'd go through the song and dance again, and it'd be doomsday for him. Maybe, as Mike Florio is suggesting, and this is illegal, to have this wink-wink, mind you, but maybe there's a wink-wink nonetheless. We're not naive to think these things don't occur and teams don't get around rules, and there's not wink-winks in sports, whether it be collusion of a player we're going to bring in, we're going to trade for. Go to the Dodgers this year, bringing in Manny Machado. There were selfies being taken at the All-Star game between him and Matt Kemp before anyone really reported that deal and before the real rumors churned. Seemed to be, and many others have said this, there was kind of a wink-wink that that's where he's going to go. At least that's where he wanted to be. That was a wink-wink. Shouldn't be, but it was a wink-wink. And these things happen. So maybe there's a wink-wink between the Steelers and Le'Veon Bell. Sits out the entire year. Preserves that body. The Steelers keep on with James Conner. They keep on getting the yards from James Conner, getting him in the end zone. The offense keeps rolling. No guarantee of championships being won. I mean, they didn't win with Le'Veon Bell, who had great years. And who knows what James Conner is going to be in the future. But regardless of James Conner in the future, he's proven himself for at least this season. He's been better than expected, better than I would have expected. Now there's body of work on him. And James Conner is going to be the guy next year unless somebody else is brought in. Le'Veon Bell's not going to be the guy next year. He's definitely gone in terms of what he wants. He wants to get the bag from somebody else. But the thought always was the Steelers would tag him again and then work around that, and that would be he would be at the risk of being tagged next year if he didn't report by Week 11. He would lose the free agency season. Just do a wink-wink. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, he said it. Look at what Connor's already done. Almost 600 yards, 9 touchdowns already. Look at that. Look at that. That's better than I would have expected. That's moving the ball on the ground. I did keep the little graphic there on the bottom, though, intentionally. Normally, I would have bumped that out. Because the game against the Ravens recently was one of the worst games he's had all year. Only 9 carries, I believe it, 19 yards, barely moving the ball on the ground. Mike Tomlin, weekly press conference, told us it wasn't Connor's fault at all. That was the way the game unfolded. Can't blame James Conner there. We just got to get him the rock more. We're going to do that in the future. When we do, we win. You saw how he closed out the game last week against Cleveland, led the offense throughout most of it. Then at the end, it was old school Bus. It was old school Jerome Bettis closing out that game on the ground. And maybe that leads to the wink-wink. Because Le'Veon Bell doesn't really want to be a Steeler anymore. He knows they're not going to give him the guaranteed straight cash homie. They're not going to give him the guaranteed money that he feels he deserves. And even his peers have received, which is why I've got some flack for kind of defending Le'Veon Bell in terms of the offer wasn't that great that they offered him. Yeah, the money was there per year. But the guaranteed money of $10 million the Steelers previously offered him, that wasn't up to snuff with the Todd Gurley's, the David Johnson, the et cetera running back offers, certainly not other weaponry in terms of receivers and quarterbacks. That guaranteed money is what Le'Veon Bell wants, and the Steelers weren't going to give it to him. They didn't offer it to him before. The offer was bad in terms of guaranteed money by anybody's measure. Todd Gurley wouldn't have signed that deal, and that's who Le'Veon Bell feels is a peer of his, despite being a little younger. So because of that, he knows they're not going to give him the money. He doesn't want to be back. And the Steelers now with James Conner, maybe if Conner wasn't doing this, but now with James Conner playing so well and the offense moving on the ground, they don't want him back either. And I don't think they want him back at all this year, even to help them win a championship and then be done with him. No, I don't really think so. I know Tomlin's sick of talking about it, rolls his eyes, walks out when we bring it up, or jokes and tries to move on. There's no PR reports anymore. They keep saying they haven't heard from him. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but they don't want to talk about Le'Veon Bell. We know weeks ago the teammates in the offensive line started kind of trashing him. They said they felt he lied to them. They didn't want to get in his pocket and talk about his money, but they also didn't expect him to miss games. So they felt stabbed in the back, whether that's fair or not. That's their feelings. And they keep on, Ramon Foster saying this too, that they all just love James Conner so much, and he thanked them for AFC Player of the Week honors that he won after this past week against Cleveland. And they just love him. The whole stadium chanting, Conner, Conner, Conner. They weren't doing that for Le'Veon Bell. He's popular, to say the least. Not only around his teammates, around the organization. They all want him to do so well. Around the fan base for his success in Erie, still Western Pennsylvania, even though not in the WPIL. And then we did at Pitt and the whole cancer story and overcoming the odds, then being drafted by the Steelers. It's perfect. It's a Cinderella story. Disney should make a movie someday. So that's what they want in their heart of hearts. That's what the fans want. That's what almost the media wants, it appears. That's what the Steelers want, is James Conner to be the guy, continue to be the guy. And Le'Veon Bell just to have that era be done. Well, Bell's going to report in Week 11 unless there's this wink, wink. He's going to report in Week 11 to make sure he has that free agency season, to make sure he can't be tagged next year, to make sure that he can go ahead and, in his eyes, go get the bag next year with some other team and then prove his worth the rest of this year, maybe win a championship. But really, he's preserved himself now long enough. He's missed some game checks. He doesn't want to miss more. Week 11, though, he'll be there to get that free agency season, whether the team wants him there or not, and he'll hope he's playing well, and maybe he'll be sitting out a couple weeks if they put an exemption on him, and it could be a whole drama fest. But whenever he's on the field, he's going to want to play well to showcase himself for a new team. And they're going to, maybe James Conner still would be the starter based on how well he's played. That's probably what the team would want. So how are you going to work that in? Bell's going to want to get his touches, or then he's going to be grumbling. Will he find it insulting that Conner starts above him, even though Conner's played so well because he's the veteran? Granted, he wants to not have too much tax on his body, so maybe he'll be okay with that. So many questions. It'll be funny. It'll be drama. Him being there will be best for business for me. I won't mind it. It'll be the most asinine story at the end of this season, especially now with how Conner's playing and this team winning, barring how it goes in the few weeks prior to him being there in Week 11. But again, unless there's the wink, wink, that was presented by Mike Florio. Here's the headline, Le'Veon Bell rumors. Here's why the running back would skip the entire season, or could skip the entire season, and why the Steelers might prefer it. Le'Veon Bell, he could skip the entire season, and that's really what the Steelers want. All you got to have happen is a little wink-wink between the Steelers and Le'Veon Bell. We won't pick up that tag next year. You missed the whole year. We go without you. We don't need you anymore. We won't pick up the tag next year, and the next year, go ahead. Go get the bag elsewhere and go get what you really feel you're worth, because we're not going to give it to you. You know that. So get the bag elsewhere. It's the only way, really, where they both win. I think it's a perfect situation. Both sides win. Give them a little wink-wink. It's against the rules, but how can you really prove it? Which, again, is what Mike Florio brought up. Nobody would prove it. You never really would get collusion, even though it probably would happen. But a little wink-wink, Steelers and Bell. Just don't report. Miss the whole year. Preserve your body. Go get the bag next year. We won't tag you. That is the perfect scenario for both sides. Now, as I close things out here on this spooky version, as I'm spooky here, I'm talking about Le'Veon Bell reporting to the Steelers. That's terrifying for them. And I'm dressed here, my costume, a sports media personality in Pittsburgh. Wow. Just head over to some national sites and do a little Google search on Pittsburgh sports media in the last year or so and some drama that we've had. That's scary. That's scary for the fans. But in all seriousness, a topic that shouldn't be is how I kind of want to close this show. And obviously, I don't want to get into politics on this show. That's not what I'm trying to do here. Some may construe it that way, but I'm not trying to get into politics on this show. I had to do it a lot last year, another outlet, when I was hosting a show by this same name, especially with the Steelers and the mess they got into with the national anthem. But it's not saying anybody out there can't speak on politics if you're in sports media. Go ahead. You don't have to stick to sports. I wouldn't criticize you if you jump off of sports. But this is still going to be a part of sports. And it's a forced thing that I feel like I got to get this out. Obviously, the events of last week, the events that happened at the Tree of Life Synagogue, that happened to the Jewish community, that happened to all of Pittsburgh, not just the Jewish community, was awful, horrible, heinous act. And there's no excuse for it at all. It's just horrendous. And it has brought the city together. So when you have a time of tragedy, it's going to bring the city together. That's what the Penguins are trying to get out there, trying to unify the city. You saw the video package they put together, or if you didn't see it yet, you should. The video package they put together of Pittsburgh and of the great city that we're in here, and of the unification of the city and of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And if that can happen there, it can happen anywhere, but we're Pittsburgh strong. We're not going to let that defeat us. We're going to conquer beyond that evil act. And no terroristic act or evil act is going to kill the spirit of Pittsburgh because we're Pittsburgh strong. I can't even do that package justice by expressing it now. That was just how remarkable it was. So it's on the Penguins Twitter. Go ahead and find it. But in addition to that video package, which was a part of the whole festivities of this week, normally the game on the eve of Halloween is a Halloween game for the Penguins. You have the broadcasters, you have Selena Pompiani dressing up as something, you have maybe a player or two who before games and some videos, maybe there's even something going on around the arena. People go to the game dressed up in costumes. Yeah, you have mascots and whoever else. It's all a festive evening, and it's costume filled and it's fun loving. They canceled that. One of the best nights of the year. They canceled that because of the recent events, and that was the decision they had to make. It was the right call, not in any way criticizing that decision. And in its place, they did a wonderful thing, or at least in my eyes. Weirdly, not everybody agrees, but they did a wonderful thing in terms of organizing a fundraiser and raising money for the victims of the evil acts and of the heinous acts at the Tree of Life Synagogue. And let me get the numbers here. I believe we have that. I'm sure that probably has changed at this point, but well, that's the Mr. Rogers neighborhood quote here. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would tell me, look at the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. There it is, because you could find that. It's brought the city together, and there were people bringing donuts and coffee and just randomly wanting to help out around that community the day that happened, and it's still going on. People want to help. Just look at all the money that's been raised. If I can see here. Okay, I don't got the numbers. Oh, there it is. There it is. Penguins fans have raised. There it is. $209,000. $209,000. And I'm sure that number's climbing. So Pittsburgh Penguins raising $209,000. That was just the support of the victims and their families. That was just at the game. That was just at the fundraiser they did at the game, and that, or in terms of what the Penguins are doing. That maybe just not at the game, but that's the number the Penguins have raised to this point. And that tweet was hours ago, so that number I'm sure is climbing. But that just gives you a perspective on what they could do and how much money they could raise. Whether that's exact or not is immaterial. That number is going to be higher, and I want it to be higher, and I'd love it to be exponential. And it's going to get there. There's people donating as we speak. And it's wonderful. Problem is, not everybody feels that way. That's my confused face. That's where I'm dressed up in my costume as a sports media personality, which is already scary for you, but one that's annoyed with you. One that's annoyed with some people out there, some Penguin fans in particular. Because not everybody thinks that's wonderful. Not everybody. This isn't universal. It's amazing to me how this would not be universal, but it isn't, as nothing is these days. and we're so divided, even when we are uniting now and should continue to unite, but maybe we're not uniting as much as we could be. And again, I won't get into politics, but not everybody finding that wonderful. How could that be? That's confusing. And where people went with it in their criticism, they weren't criticizing the Penguins canceling Halloween night, which is an incredibly popular night, a fun-loving night, and a night that fans, even casual fans, would go to just for the atmosphere there at PPG Paints Arena annually. It's a new thing they've done the last few years. It's just tremendous. Maybe one of the better games of the year, certainly of the fall season. To go, for sure. But that wasn't the criticism. Of course not. Everybody understood why they did that. The criticism was now for the Penguins to cancel that and then do a fundraiser for the victims and their families. There was a flag in one of the images of police. It was a symbolic flag for police, and they had a ceremonial puck dropping that involved a celebration and a nod to the police, because as evil and as horrible as that tragedy was, the Tree of Life Synagogue, it could have been much worse. And many officers were shot in the line of duty going back in there to try to save people, and they made sure it wasn't worse than it is. They prevented it being a lot worse. So they deserve their due. But there were people out there, and generally speaking, they align with one particular side, but I don't want to just go in that direction. So it's just anyone out there with this levied criticism that the Penguins are being hypocritical now for what they felt was stepping into politics by aligning yourself with the police and giving a nod to the police, or for doing this event in which they are going to organize and raise money for the victims and their families. And maybe they're not upset at that directly, but they thought it was hypocritical of the Penguins to do all of that now, when a couple years ago, the Penguins decided to go to the White House. Now, they won their first recent Stanley Cups of the back-to-back at the end of Obama, and they went to the White House as they always would and as teams were then. And then once Trump was elected, of course, it was a little bit of a murky waters in terms of the Golden State Warriors didn't want to go, and then he de-invited them, and that was a whole circus. LeBron making comments that if we win, and he didn't win those NBA Finals, but if we win, we weren't going to go as well, with the Cleveland Cavaliers getting his championship in, breaking their curse under Obama. The conversation of the Cubs and different teams that were left into the Trump sphere of when they would go to the White House and whether they would go or not. And that was always a topic. You win a championship under the Trump presidency. Are you going to go or are you not going to go? And for the teams that chose not to go, they were celebrated by this contingent of people. For the teams that went, they were vilified and they were acted as if they were Trump supporters and were joining forces with Donald Trump and his presidency and what that side and those critics would deem as evil. And I'm not getting into politics, and I'm not claiming to be defending Trump here by any means, and I'm not going to go that direction. But the Penguins then went to the White House because that was just what you do. And they won a championship. They won another one back-to-back at the time, and they wanted to celebrate that. They went before. They wanted to go again. They wanted to go again for a player that wasn't on the team before and that was on that team and felt a championship they didn't previously feel, and they wanted to be able to just give them the normal thing. They go to the White House off of winning championships. And there was I believe they gave a golf bag or something was weird. It wasn't a jersey, but they did something else with Trump, and it was a bit odd. They actually went dark on Twitter, so they weren't live tweeting it like they normally would, and they normally did under Obama. There was less celebration around. So the social media of the Penguins acted weird for about 24 hours during that time. So they went, but they kind of made it awkward and made it a thing by how they acted, despite trying to act normal and go. But there were people out there who were criticizing the Penguins for going because they felt that wasn't staying out of it. That was actually supporting Donald Trump, which again, and I don't want to go back to that, but that's a part of this, was asinine. The Penguins they won a championship. They wanted to do the normal thing. They wanted to go to the White House. It didn't mean they were supporting Donald Trump by any means, just like when they went under Obama. or any team that went under Obama didn't mean they were supporting his presidency. That didn't mean that at all. And Sidney Crosby, a legendary figure of his sport and of this city of Pittsburgh, who seemingly understands this city and how important it is to wrap their arms around their legendary athletes more than many others that have played here. He's never been out there with his political opinion. You don't know where Sidney Crosby stands, and he's not born in this country. He was born in Canada, of course. Many Penguins were not born in this country. They were born in Canada, or they were born in Russia, like Evgeny Malkin. But they're not out there with their political opinion. We don't know what it is, unless you know them personally. And 99.9% of you watching or listening to this do not. So Sidney Crosby's political opinion is not out there. He doesn't want it out there. He doesn't want to be LeBron James being a social justice warrior. And not to say nothing wrong with LeBron doing that. He's allowed to give his political opinion whenever he wants. Criticize the president whenever he wants. He can be a social justice warrior, and he's done a lot of great things for those causes. So I'm glad he's doing it and taking it up that way. Props to him. With his school and different things he's started there for his community of Akron, even after leaving them. Still doing it for them. But Sidney Crosby has not. And the Penguins have not. They've not been vocal with political opinions. Nor should they be required to. If LeBron wants to do that and be a social justice warrior, phenomenal. But there's no requirement. It shouldn't be required. If LeBron never did that, like his predecessor of greatest in his sport, Michael Jordan, didn't. You didn't know Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan's political opinion. They kept that quiet. Nobody was mad that we didn't know their political opinion. They weren't required to be social justice warriors. And don't give me this a different time. I know it is. But it's just unfair to require somebody to be a social justice warrior or to align with you politically. So for those mad that the Penguins went to the White House, you basically require that your favorite sports team, that your favorite franchise, that your favorite athlete maybe, or the best of that team with his largest voice, aligns with you politically. You literally require that sports, your favorite sports team, and that athlete align with you politically. I don't. I'm sane with this one. People can call me crazy for certain opinions. I'm sane with this one. Maybe you're a bit nuts out there, guys. I don't require my favorite athlete, my favorite sports team, any team I may cover, to align with me politically. I just don't. They can have their political opinions. I'll have mine. If I want to bring them up in my media career, I'm allowed. I can. I have in the past. I'm not kind of now, but if I want, sure, I can. It's my right. Nobody should criticize me for doing that. I don't have to stick to sports. Just like an athlete doesn't have to stick to sports either. He can do whatever he wants. He can be a social justice warrior if he wants. He can be LeBron James with his voice. Great for him if he wants to. But Sidney Crosby does not want to. He does not want to be a social justice warrior. He does not want his political opinion out there. Same thing with Evgeny Malkin. Same thing with Phil Kessel and a few others. And really the team overall. Forget the individual players. The franchise doesn't want to have their political opinions out there and take sides. That's their right too. You shouldn't require them to align with you politically. The Pittsburgh Penguins do not owe you aligning with your political opinion. That's asinine. That's ridiculous. I don't require a particular sports franchise to agree with me politically. That's crazy. Some of you apparently do, because you decided to criticize the Penguins for raising money for the victims' families and the whole cause of the Tree of Life Synagogue tragedy. And the money they've raised in $209,000 and counting, that I'm sure is much higher than that as you listen to this broadcast and watch my costume of now an annoyed media personality and my beautiful face there with the radio gold. You you require your favorite sports team to align with you politically. You require an athlete, the best on that team, the best in his sport, to be a social justice warrior. That's ridiculous. There's no requirements. If they don't want to, if they want to just keep up the norm and go to the White House like you always would and have that celebration, that doesn't mean they're agreeing with Donald Trump or supporting him by any means. Just like going before did not mean anybody was supporting Obama, supporting George W. Bush for Republican, supporting Bill Clinton before that. Going to the White House when you win a championship does not mean you support, as an organization, a franchise, an ownership, a player, whoever, a coach, that presidency's politics. Doesn't mean that. Does not mean that you support that president and his policies and his politics or anything he said just by going to the White House. The Penguins aren't saying that by going, or they're keeping up with the norm. They're not required to align with you politically, guys. They just aren't. And you shouldn't require it either. You shouldn't require that from them. And then to somehow move to vilify the Penguins for this fundraiser, claiming and what they did with the police and giving a nod to the police with a ceremonial puck drop and the police flag and all of that, to somehow vilify the Penguins and call them hypocrites and say that they're not trying to stay out of politics because they're doing this and that's political when they wanted to stay out of it by going to the White House and that's what they said then, but you felt that was political and that whole mess. Come on. Absolutely equivocally ridiculous. They're doing a great cause here that are going to help the victims and their families in the midst of tragedy. They tried to bring the city together. They tried to bring that arena together. They canceled a great event of theirs that many people in the stands may have liked to actually still have, but they canceled it. That was the right call. It's not about that right now. It's about unifying ourselves as a city in the midst of tragedy and being Pittsburgh strong. The Pittsburgh Penguins wanted to send that message. They wanted to just send the message that it's about those 11 victims. It's about their families. It's about how evil and horrible that was. It's about helping them. And then it's about moving on as a city and being Pittsburgh strong. Watch the video again. Tremendous. And look at the success. Look at the success that the night was. Look at that. Look. Mr. Rogers involved. I mean, look at that girl there. Cute girl holding a sign. Mr. Rogers quote above it. Man, that's evil. Look at that. Horrible franchise. What a selfish political franchise here. Yeah, I'm being sarcastic. Just regardless of the White House topic of a couple years ago after the back-to-back cups, or now here at the Tree of Life Synagogue tragedy, organizing a fundraiser to raise money for victims' families after that tragedy in their city. There's no evil, selfishness, political game there. Giving a nod to the police for making sure that wasn't worse than it became with the 11 victims and wasn't 25 or plus. And for putting their lives on the line and getting shot while trying to save others and likely saving some, even though 11 unfortunately passed away. There's no political movement there. Mayor Lemieux, the Penguins, they may have their own political opinions. Sidney Crosby, others, they may have their own political opinions. They may not all be the same. I highly almost guarantee you that Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Mayor Lemieux, Sidney Crosby, Phil Kessel, Chris Letang, Gensel, whoever else, they don't all agree politically. Some maybe do, some maybe don't. But they're not going to sell themselves as a political organization, do a political thing for you, all of a sudden tweet and make it clear they hate Trump, they're against him, and they're not going to the White House because they want to speak out against a president. They're not going to do that. They didn't do it. They went to keep up the norm. They weren't being political then, and you shouldn't require the Pittsburgh Penguins as a franchise to agree with you politically and align with you and your feelings. That's insane. And then now they do a great thing to help families after a tragedy and somehow get vilified. That's a bit absurd as well, because they're doing a great thing. That's all that was. They were trying to do the right thing, and the cops deserved the recognition that they got during that game. They absolutely did. There's no reason to argue about any of that. And moral of the story, it doesn't matter what a franchise's political opinions are. They don't have to align with yours. And the Pittsburgh Penguins are not publicly making any political statements. Their intent is to not do so. But regardless what you feel they are, they don't have to align with you. I have favorite athletes. I have favorite teams. Don't root as much now because I'm covering these teams, of course, keeping it fair. But it doesn't bother me. Ken Griffey Jr. was my favorite athlete growing up. If he and I disagreed politically, wouldn't make me hate him. Would not. Just maybe some of you would, but that's just insane. That's just insane. That's the scariest thing out there. That's the scariest thing this Halloween season was the Penguins being vilified for trying to help victims and their families after tragedy. That was pretty terrifying because there were some fans levying that. There were even some colleagues of mine in media that were levying that criticism, going back to the White House visit and somehow connecting the dots there on a political statement the Penguins are making and somehow coming off conservative and Trump supporters as a franchise. And that's just insane. That's just asinine, and that's just terrifying for anybody to have that thought and that opinion here. Now I call myself. Take a swig there of the College Radio Cup and wrap this up so I can enjoy my night. And before I do, always got to give the reminder, subscribe. Subscribe to us on the YouTube channel, Pittsburgh Sports Live. Click subscribe. Subscribe right there click the subscribe button. You do so, make it easier for us to give these golden gems of content to you on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Follow us on Twitter, PGH Sports Live, at PGH Sports Live. Again, there with the YouTube channel, Pittsburgh Sports Live. Check out our websites, Pittsburgh Hockey Now, Pittsburgh Soccer Now, Pittsburgh Sports Now, the mothership there over the family, and, of course, pghsportslive.com. So, enjoy the season. Enjoy the spookiness out there this Halloween season. Remember, it's about unifying right now, though. Most important in Pittsburgh. It's about unifying. It's about being Pittsburgh strong. And no matter what side of any aisle you're on, any divisive attitude of, I can't be friends or associate this person because they have that opinion, or I'm going to immediately flip out at that person because they have that opinion, or I'm going to vilify an organization because I feel like they don't align with me politically and they may disagree, or they may not be doing enough for me politically, in my opinion. Just, that's not unifying anybody. But regardless, that's what we need right now. We need the unification. And read the Mr. Rogers quote here one last time. Check it out. Mr. Rogers, he's keeping the attitude. That evil happened in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, folks. So it can happen anywhere, but it's never going to defeat us. It's never going to kill us here in Pittsburgh, and that it's never going to kill our spirit, for a better phrasing there, in Pittsburgh. And hopefully the 11 victims, as horrible as that was, can galvanize the city in a more positive way, and we can get over any of that negativity and divisiveness. But this has been another golden quality edition here of Mic Drop from the Beaver County Auto Studios on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I am your host, Mike Asti, conquering sports radio and trying to do it Pittsburgh strong, because we are here in this city as we all try to unify, as difficult as that may be right now. And we keep on keeping on. We keep on being Pittsburgh strong one day at a time.